Okay, I'm Kevin Buck. Is that okay?
Jesse changes you.
I can change it, Marjorie, if you want.
Jackknives and a few things.
Why don't you bring yours down anyway? Why are you still leaving it there?
Because I'm there. I'm there a
thought you were
lot.
there.
I haven't got that room at all set up. So I felt something hard
Okay,
on it.
no, so you can start dragging that back and forth across my desk. It's funny that this one was making all kinds of noise after I fed it once today.
Hello, folks.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
I'm just
Hi.
reading through the minutes.
Let's see what's going on here. I've got another Zoom meeting going on in another room, so, or my wife has a Zoom meeting going on, so I wasn't sure that it was going to connect properly.
That's sort of par for the course in our house, so it seems to work fine on our end, but I don't know. Do you have Spectrum?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the bills that go with it.
Yeah, right. Oh, you should have said, I got the plan where you get the internet without the bills. You should sign up for that one.
Oh, okay.
It's a
Is that the-
temporary, it's a
Is
temporary
that the one
plan.
where they send it to Greg's house?
Yeah, right.
Hey, Lawson, good news about last night.
Yeah, I watched the meeting after the fact. But
Yay,
certainly we appreciate the support from the town, so that's great.
great.
Yeah.
What happened?
The selectmen, when they approved the budget for nonprofit associations or nonprofit support, included a Climate to Thrive. So
Gotcha.
that's good news when I'm wearing my Climate to Thrive hat.
Okay. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Who are we waiting on?
F and Brett. And James, the attorney.
Yeah.
Um,
And Diane's going to show up as well?
yep.
Okay.
Here comes Diane.
Everyone.
John, how's Andy doing?
He's doing well. He's been running around. I don't see him as much as I used to, particularly
Yeah,
during.
he tells me you make more money than he does now.
Nah, well, don't believe that for a moment.
All right, looks like we got everybody now.
Just waiting on James. Oh, here he comes.
Okay, he's here. I'll call the meeting to order. Call the meeting of Tremont Planning Board meeting of March 23rd to order at 6:01. Roll call, Lawson Wilson,
Here.
Brett Witham.
Here.
Okay. Marjorie Buck,
Here,
Jeff Young,
Here.
myself, Mark Good, I'm here. And we have Code Enforcement Officer Jesse Dunbar and Recording Secretary Jan Sprague. There you are, Jan. And excuse me, so many names on the screen here. And members of the public. And we also have town attorney James Collier and Diane O'Connell, the attorney who will be representing the planning board on some of these campground issues. Diane, welcome. Hello.
Thank you. Good evening.
Okay. Everybody's here, so we don't have to excuse any absences. Any adjustment to the agenda?
I was wondering if we'd like to take the application as a Goodwin first, then go to the campground and then do our administrative stuff last. And the
I
reason
think we just, Jeff, I think at the last meeting, we decided James would go first because he's on the town's dime right here. And so
Pay
we
for 'em.
want to get rid of him as soon as possible.
Nobody likes me.
Well, that's true.
Is that okay?
I'm gonna be quick.
Well,
Okay.
do we want to switch the other two?
It doesn't matter to me one way or another. What do you folks think?
The pre-application conference for the, I don't even, like.
Boat storage, I
The
believe.
boat
it is.
storage is a pre-application conference.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I would be inclined to do that before the completion review, which is likely to take, I don't know, longer than the pre-application conference, although.
That's a good way to word it.
Hard to predict it, hard to predict for sure, but,
Okay, if that's the wish of the board, I'll take a motion to make that change to the agenda.
I so move.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion is second on the table to change the agenda to move the pre-application conference for John Goodwin Jr. ahead of the completeness review of the Wilderness Lodge campground. All in favor, Lawson Wilson,
Yes.
Brett Witham,
I don't know if ambivalence counts as a vote, but I guess I'll say yes.
yes or no are your choices, okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Doesn't really matter. I don't know why we're spending time on this, but yes.
Marjorie,
Yes,
Jeff,
Yes.
myself, yes. Okay, unanimous, okay. So moving right along here, we're gonna go to the old business, the discussion of proposed ordinance changes with our town
Just keep-
attorney, James Collier.
Mark, you skipped over the minutes.
All the minutes, I always do that. Thank you for keeping me on my toes. Anybody see anything in the minutes they'd like to change? If not, I'll take a motion to approve them.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion is second to approve the minutes of March 9th as written. All in favor, Lawson,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Marjorie,
yes,
Jeff,
Yes.
and myself, yes, unanimous. Okay, now we'll move on to the ordinance changes. James? You're muted.
James, we can't hear you.
Still can't hear you.
but that's good.
It's not bad.
So moved and seconded.
Thank you, James, for the evening.
Mark, see if you can move him. Whoever's the host of the meeting, see if they can unmute him.
Let me see. James Collier. I can ask him to unmute.
I'm unmuted now.
There you
There
go.
we go.
Live and in color, sorry. As
Not
I
often.
started to say so eloquently.
James, I've known you for years. It's not often that you're mute. Let's put it that way.
Exactly, exactly. The last thing I sent was the difference in the site plan review ordinance between building and structure, and Jeff, first time he's ever been wise, had the wise idea of having me look over building and structure.
Look at
And
this
all I
shirty
did-
wall.
I hear somebody?
Hold on.
All I did was go through and cross out building and replace it with structure unless it was very clearly a building and could not be a structure. For those of you who were napping last time, a building would be something which encloses something, usually. So, and then you don't say structure permit, you say a building permit. So I don't know if the board members have had a chance to look over all those, but they're very straightforward.
Yeah, the only use of building I saw, James, was on page 28, where you have occupancy of a building under E.
Yeah, you can't occupy a structure.
Why not? There's structures that you might not occupy, but you could occupy a structure if a structure's a house, a garage.
I don't think, ask Jesse, but I don't think you think of those as occupying. What,
But you-
28?
28.
What section is it in?
E, submission of as-built plans. And I also bring that up because you've deleted building from the definitions.
Yeah, I think you understand what a building is. Ordinary common usage of the word building. Most people know what that is. Don't you know what it is? Do you think it's ambiguous? I mean, building's a
Yep.
building.
Okay,
I don't think you need it. And as to this, I kind of like this, the way I changed it, or the way I left it.
occupancy of a building.
Yeah,
Any board members have an opinion on that?
I'm sorry, I guess I'm lost. We're talking about the site plan review ordinance, right?
yeah. Just narrowed in on the issue of
Yep,
building versus structure.
and I
Some
just,
genius decided they should use building instead of structure.
right, I understand that, I see, okay, so page 28, showing this,
He is an Exxon.
yep, I see, okay, thank you, I'm there now.
Okay. And the reason I did that, Mr. Chairman, is that certificate of occupancy is usually occupancy of a building. What do you think, Jesse? I don't think it matters.
No. I don't think it matters.
I actually leave this one, Mr. Chairman, unless you have a burning desire to change it.
I'm fine. I don't want to belabor things.
Okay, good.
I'm fine.
So, other than that, the rest of it is, they're all technical, building structure all the way through. The other thing that I was gonna talk about was the warrant articles.
Hold
Jesse,
on before we
you-
move on page 3, you have a comment.
Oh, sorry, I was too quick. Yeah. Yeah, did you see that, Jesse?
Yep.
Can you do that? If the
Yeah,
planning
so-
board wants to.
Yep.
It's just like it says, Mr. Chairman, it's a more complete definition. If you look at the two of them side by side, I like this one better.
Sounds good to me. Any other board members? Yes, Brett?
Sounds good to me too. Yep.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what the finger in the air meant, sorry.
Thumbs up generally means yes.
Oh, it's a thumb up, okay.
It wasn't a finger. it was a-
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
looked like a finger. I wasn't
He
sure
would
which
never
one it
do that.
was.
He would never do that. Anything else?
That's all I saw.
Okay, good, let's move on. In
Please.
regard to the warrant articles, pursuant to the board's instruction, I had gone and tried to help Jesse and sure clerks named Katie with warrant articles, but the town manager got his beak in there, and you know, I think it was a good call. He didn't like having them separate. So then today I sent new ones, which would say that the first two would say respectively, the land use ordinance is hereby amended, and then you would attach it. And then what would be attached would be Jesse's changes with the insertions underlined and the deletions struck through. And the warrant article itself says something like, I don't know what I said, but it was something which mentioned integration or synchronization of the two ordinances, technical changes, and something else. So basically the three things we talked about, definitions. So I did that for the land use ordinance. Then I did one for the site plan review ordinance. And then in the third one, it was going to be camping, and that was going to be separate. And then Jesse had the idea, I don't know how much room it's going to take, I haven't looked at it, to do that in the easier format of putting it right in the warrant. Whereas you say, shall the land use ordinance be amended as follows, as shown? And then you just list the items right there with the deletions and strike-throughs. Because I don't think there's that many. Jesse, you get that on one page?
Yeah, it can be on one page, half a page.
So I didn't know if the board wanted to comment on that before it went to the, did you get that memo?
Well, I got the memo like about 5 o'clock. I didn't check my email till like 5:30. So I'm hoping all the other members did get that memo with the changes. It's different than what was in our packet.
Right, I'm looking at it now, and I think that it more or less makes sense, although, and I don't know if there's a way to do this formatting wise. I guess the warrant is a pretty like unformatted document, but the difference between warrant article 1 and 2 in this list is pretty subtle in that it's just between the land use ordinance and the site plan review ordinance, which is actually like
That's right.
obviously like a major big deal.
Yeah.
But if you're looking fast, it's hard to figure out why are these two things different.
Well, the good thing is Mr. Gray reads them and he's slow.
Great. So maybe that's a non-issue.
And
It
in
is
the
not.
in the warrant, it's going to say Article 43, and then in bold, land use ordinance.
Okay.
And then it'll go into this paragraph, and then Article 44, site plan review ordinance, paragraph, and so on.
Great. This is a thumbs up.
Plus, this will be at the open town meeting, so we'll have a chance to explain if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, exactly. I think when as it says, correct certain technical concerns, change certain definitions, and to better synchronize, you know, that we know what that means because we've been going through this for a month. Members of the public will probably want you to explain.
My other sort of observation comment is that I think it's really helpful to have that paragraph in brackets that sort of explains the motivation for this. And I wonder if we want to include a similar paragraph for the campground warrant that, I mean, that sort of somehow says like, this is why we're doing it. Or why
Well, that's
we're proposing it.
usually what you do is, if I remember correctly, I mean, there's a couple other attorneys on the line here, but is you put, and I haven't seen last year's warrant, the selectmen will draft sometimes with the town attorney's involvement, something in italics. And what you'll do is put 2 or 3 lines below it in italics with an explanation. So we could do that. I tried that. I tried about 3 versions today. I tried it. I put it in italics and I took it out because, and you know, I've been called pompous as amongst other names, but I thought after looking at it that the article was good. Lawson, you were a pretty good reader. I mean, I read it and I kept thinking, well, I didn't need an explanation. The article is pretty good. And the question is, if you attempt to explain, as soon as you explain, do you need half a page? Or should you just do it verbally? And
I in the spiel that I had to write for the town report, I did mention the proposed campground changes and basically explained what they were. So anybody who picks up a town report and reads that will know.
over the years, generally what's happened is those little explanations by the selectmen, those are for something that's really highly technical that you can't get. You need some direction. And what happens here is the standard, most notably explained in Pakal versus the town of Bar Harbor, where Mr. Pakal and Arkwright and some others sued the town over the wording of a land use ordinance. The Superior Court judge said it had to be in plain English, easily understood. So Lawson, you're a plain guy. You can read plain English. Amendments to the Tremont Land Use Ordinance to correct certain technical errors, technical concerns. We know what that is. Change certain definitions. We know what that is. And better synchronize the two ordinances.
Yeah, those two things, I think that's fine. I'm sold on those. It's the campground piece, but I think that once
Okay.
we see that language
Right.
for I don't know, I'm not, don't have it in front of me, but like, what, the things that we're changing to the campground ordinance or proposing,
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
those
It'll
are
be right, it'll be right in the article.
right in there, and maybe it doesn't need an explanation because it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
clear.
Now you could, Jesse, as Jesse says, they'll be right in the warrant because we're just going to do them right there. But you may want to put a spin on it in the explanation. That's political. I wouldn't touch that. You know, changes were needed to the campground ordinance because the buffer room was too small or whatever you did. But that's highly political. You
Right.
can take that up with the Board of Selectmen. That's not for me to say.
Is everybody happy with these?
Yeah, do we need a motion or a,
That's, yeah. that's
Yes,
what
please.
to do what? Like
Motion to send the suggested amendments to the select board.
Suggested
Or a date
amendments or
referring-
warrant articles, Jesse?
Oh,
Both,
Yes, okay.
to the select board for their consideration for the warrant.
Somebody want to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll try. I make a motion to send the amendments and warrant articles as drafted by James Collier to the select board for their review and inclusion in town meeting.
May I suggest we don't say they're drafted by James Collier, just because they really are work product.
Great, yeah.
sounds good to me. I can be anonymous.
Lawson, you want to restate the motion, please?
Sure. I move to send the amendments and warrant articles as drafted, or as drafted in today's meeting to the select board for inclusion in the town meeting docket, the town meeting.
I
Second.
second that.
Okay, we have a motion second on the table to send the amendments and warrant articles on to selectmen for approval. All in favor, Lawson,
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
There he is. Jeff,
Yes,
Marjorie, you're
Yeah,
muted. Yes,
there.
okay. And myself, yes, unanimous, Jesse.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, I guess I'm out of here, right?
I guess we're done with you, James. Thanks,
We've
okay?
got Steve Salisbury, John Pottle, and Diane O'Connell. Those are some of my favorite people in all of Hancock County, so you're in good hands.
Okay.
good night, James, thank you.
See you guys later.
Thanks.
James,
Okay. Moving along here again, we're going to go to the pre-application conference for John W. Goodwin Jr. And I guess Steve Salisbury, you're representing John Goodwin. Is anybody else here for that?
Nope, just myself, Steve Salisbury for John Goodwin.
Okay, and this is a pre-application conference.
Yes,
Maybe you can explain to us what you're doing?
okay, love to. So John has 16 or 17 acres here on Clydesdale Way. It has a small existing quarry hole that's been excavated out. And he'd like to expand that area for some permanent boat storage. And better utilize that area of the land. So that would be our application, and under site plan review, the planning board has to review all applications to move more than, I think, 500 cubic yards of material. We have in excess of that. I think I estimated 16 or 17,000 yards of material to come out to level off the site, which is about 1.5 acres in size. If we complete the site as shown on the plan, it'll be 1.5 acres in footprint. That's the extent of the application.
Okay, and this would be a boat and trailer storage?
Yes,
Okay, and would people be working on their boats there or strictly storage?
I envision it as strictly storage, just bring it on in during the off season, whether it's covered off-site or brought in and shrunk wrap on site. That kind of activity might happen on site, but there wouldn't be any maintenance or anything like that.
And the quarry no longer is in operation?
No, he's actually filling it back in slowly to level it off.
Now, you say that you're gonna remove about 16,000 cubic yards,
Yes,
and will that be ledge too? I take it
Yes.
blasting? So what's
That's
what's gonna happen with that ledge?
it'll be taken off site and he'll use it in his construction business. Rip wrap or coping stones along the road, or just crush it into more fine material.
So the question I have, wouldn't that be mineral extraction then? Under our ordinance?
I honestly can't say.
If you look at page 26 of the land use ordinance. It talks about mineral extraction. I believe that's what is taking place for that part. It's not like you're just bringing in boats and trailers.
Yeah, we need to extract to make a level site.
So I think when you come to us with an application, you're gonna need to address that. I don't know what
Okay.
anybody else thinks.
Yep.
Jesse, what do you think?
Yes, I agree.
Our definitions for mineral extraction sort of puts it on all four too. What he's doing, it does bring this section into play,
Mhm.
Right.
in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah.
It talks about just removal of soil, topsoil, gravel, clay, rock, yada, yada.
Anybody see anything else? Any board member have other questions?
I had one question. Is it boat storage and the trailer, boat trailers or other types of trailers?
No, boat trailers mostly. Because, I mean, they're gonna bring the trailer back presumably for the summer and leave it there.
Oh, so it's not like camping trailers or that sort of thing, or
No, boat trailers.
only boats? Okay.
Can we mend it to reflect that it's for boat trailers? And
Yeah,
not leave-
I'll certainly address that in the
I feel
application.
vague and I'd like to tighten it up, that's all.
Yeah. I will address the types of trailers we will store there.
Great, thank you.
Steve, that entrance isn't, it's pretty narrow there, isn't it? You're gonna make some changes there so boats can get hauled in there?
Yeah, I don't know, they bring. Well, they bring dump trucks in there to get sand. I'll take a look at that and see if we need to make those radiuses at the entrance a little bit more flared.
Okay, yeah. That's, might be something you want to look at as well. And basically you're gonna take the rock out. It'll get hauled away, crushed up for construction purposes.
That's right.
And you said in the application, all stumps and everything get hauled away. correct?
Yes.
All that stuff. So what I'm envisioning now is like a big hole in the ground. That's
Yeah.
not going to be the case, or is it?
No, that'll be the case. There's a two-sided hole there now, because you can drive right in from the road at the flat level. And it'll just be a bigger two-sided hole when we get done.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
How do you answer the question earlier? I'm sorry to repeat.
Yeah,
it.
Jeff, go ahead.
No work will be going on the boats themselves on the premises. You said, is that correct?
That's right.
It's strictly storage.
Strictly storage.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So there'll be no hazardous materials of any kind up there.
Not brought in. No, I mean, might have some existing oil and a motor, outboard motor or inboard motor, but it won't be brought in for service.
Where does the boat get spray washed off when it leaves the ocean?
That's a good question. Yeah, I know sometimes somebody like J.R. Anderson might come down and power wash the bottom of these boats in the off season. I suppose that could happen here.
So you won't have water available to the site?
No, strictly dry storage, unless it rains, but there's no roofs, there's no floor, just parking on a dirt pad.
Depending on the type of bottom paint on a boat, you use high pressure water on that. You do remove a fair amount of bottom paint. It's designed to come off quite off, oxidize off. Do we need to be concerned with that going to groundwater or anything in the area?
Yeah, I'll give that some thought.
I think you'll find some information in the site plan review ordinance about hazardous materials. You might want to take a look at that.
Yep, thank you.
Also, in the springtime, when you commission a boat, most people would probably want to go in and paint the boat and et cetera on dry land before it hits the water.
That's why I ask about service.
Yeah, that'd be, it's getting again towards maintenance, so John said there wouldn't be any maintenance here. I'll be sure to clarify that and put some bullet points in an application. We're not gonna do this, we're not gonna do that, so it's something the town can enforce.
I'm just wondering if the individual owners are allowed to go in to commission their own boats before leaving the site.
Yep.
So your customer base would be both probably referrals from existing boat yards and the public at large come in and say, can I rent a parking space to store?
That's what I would assume, yes.
Just in the spirit of asking questions now, so we don't have to later, the survey plan and the satellite image seem to match up in terms of their property lines, but there seems to be a little bit different from the tax map. And
Surprise, surprise.
yeah, maybe that's not an issue, and we should just sort of accept that our tax maps aren't perfect.
I think we can take notes that tax maps do not reflect an accuracy of reality. I mean, quite often they're not on point.
Are we, who's responsible for the tax maps? Who keeps those?
Tax assessor?
Is that the assessor's job to update that?
Yes, yep. The assessor makes changes throughout. Well, once we get a set of maps, they make changes on their change set until the town sends that off for new map printing. That's how the process works.
Lawson, I think that's pretty accurate actually, because it all belongs to Good Winds. Howdy is a bite out of the one that you see with the trees, not the tax map, the survey map. But it's all Good Winds.
Right.
Yeah, but Howdy isn't his father.
No,
different owners.
Brother, and so.
Yeah, so that's right. Lot 85-1, I think, on the tax map.
85-1 is Howdy's.
Right.
Yep.
But John Goodwin's is 86 and 86A. Is that what we're talking? 86 and 86B.
85 and 86. 86B is gray.
Oh, okay. So is that just our memo that's wrong?
No, it's on the application.
And I don't think Bruiser Sanborn's house, where John used to live, that hasn't been broken out of the tax maps yet. So that was fairly recent.
And so 86B doesn't appear on the tax map. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Okay.
It doesn't appear on the tax map that I had access to online, so.
Yeah, it's a recent change.
Okay.
Any other questions, board members? Steve, are you all set, you think?
I think so. Thank you for your time and I appreciate the questions. I'll make sure that they're all addressed when I come back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, okay?
Yeah, have a good night. Thank you.
You too. Okay. Marjorie, it's time for you to recuse yourself.
No. Okay,
Sorry.
thank you, Mark.
Okay, and we'll move right along to the completeness review of the Wilderness, Acadia Wilderness Lodge Campground. We had 8 existing things that were 8 things that we found were incomplete the last time, and that's all we're going to address tonight, right, Jesse?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and
Wait a minute. If we've talked about those 8, they may open up other issues as we're talking about them. So I wouldn't say we just limit to those 8 because it might branch us back into something we've looked at before.
it could be, but do you want to go through the list from the beginning again, or
No, I just want conscious that we may end up talking about something we thought was okay earlier.
Okay,
But once we
so
look at
let's
the
say we go to
It
one
may
of
have
the 8.
impact on a prior review.
Jeff, do you want to speak to that at any time? We're all ears, and I also just want to, say that if it helps, and I know I've heard comment about notification, if you guys wanted to have us give just a brief overview before we jumped into those 8, I'm happy to, and we're happy to take your comments, Jeff, in any order we see fit. We know we have the notes and the minutes to the 8, but obviously we know the board can ask for an additional comment anytime. So, but I thought if it was helpful, we could do just a brief overview that people who haven't been able to be here before, due to whatever reasons, we feel that the notifications and sort of the disclosure has happened to the fullest extent.
What exactly are you saying you want to do, Greg?
I would say, Mark, I would be happy to do a brief overview if you thought appropriate. And I was just, Jeff was hinting at something and I was encouraging if we could talk about it at any time.
I think he was specifically talking about the our checklist. I don't know, what do other board members think? I don't feel a need for Greg to give an overview again.
I'm open sort of either way. I mean, I feel like it might help. I guess I just acknowledge that when we reviewed this 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I'm not sure. There were just a couple of members of the public present, and today we have more than that. And it might be a useful opportunity. I'm not sure it's necessary. I guess I would also acknowledge that there have been a couple of articles in the paper about this project, and it might be an opportunity to, at least for the purposes of our discussion today, make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what we're reviewing. Maybe it's not.
Well, I was going to acknowledge that there's considerable interest and controversy regarding this. And we have a dog barking. And we recognize it as a board, but for tonight, we're not going to accept comments from the public. Those people will get a chance later when we have a public hearing. We're here basically to find if this application that they've submitted is complete. And that's just the first step in the entire process. It doesn't mean the project gets final approval at all. It just means that the applicant has met the submission requirements, and that is if we do find it complete. Okay, and I know that there are a couple petitions circulating, one in favor by Becky Hopkins, the applicant's mother, and another one against the project. Just want to say that these petitions have no legal weight with this board. I mean, for a number of reasons, not only no legal weight, but, we have no way of even knowing who signs these things. They're online petitions. We don't know whether they're members of the town or taxpayers of the town, that sort of thing. But I would urge people who are concerned, maybe some of these petitioners, to write letters to the town, a statement to the town prior to our public hearing, maybe a week before our public hearing, which might get scheduled later. And that could be entered into the record, and we can take that into consideration.
Mark,
Yes.
it looks like we've lost Brett. So if you can hold
Yeah, I was looking for him. I didn't see him.
continuing. See if he jumps back on.
We still have a quorum without him.
Oh, here he comes.
Probably had to eat dinner.
Okay.
Welcome back, Brett.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. My internet was out for like, I don't know, 15 minutes or something.
The fire trucks went by here a little bit earlier,
Mhm.
so I don't know if there's some problems in town somewhere, but anyway. So you know where we're at, Brett? Did you catch any of that? No.
Sure.
Okay, we're back to the complete list review.
All right.
They're just starting. Haven't gone through it.
All right, perfect. So yes, I do know where we're at.
Okay, good. Do we feel a need for Greg to give an overview or not? I don't hear anything, so let's skip right ahead. How's that?
Sounds good.
You had it all ready, didn't you, Greg?
No, I just making sure we're available to the board's discretion.
Okay. We'll start on 8.1B, evidence of payment of the application. We did mention the last time that they needed to pay the technical review fee, and that's been submitted. You see in the lengthy supplement that Greg has provided with us that there's a receipt for that in there. We okay with that?
Yes, that looks good.
Okay. Jump ahead. Now, Jeff, if you want, here's something you want to go back and look at something else, or anybody else on the board, please say so. Jump right in. Second of all, boundaries of all contiguous property under total or partial control of the owner or applicant, regardless of whether all or part is being developed. And we knew that the other campground that Mr. Hopkins has was not included in that, even though it abuts this property. And so this has been included, a survey of that property. Folks satisfied with that?
I'm sorry, I haven't found it yet. Oh, wait, no, what's that? No, that's not it.
If you look at the supplement, it's like on the third page in.
I went too far back.
It's right before the large plan. Couple pages before the large plan.
My large plans are at the very back of it.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
The supplement I have, the first page is just, first two pages are a memo from Greg, and the third page has the copy of the receipt.
Yep, I got that. But then the survey of the neighboring land, of the abutting property,
probably 8 pages in from the back, just before the plan set.
And it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet, it looks like.
Yeah, it is.
Frank and Rebecca Hopkins, Kellytown Road.
Yeah, that is the lot A that you see, the 1.6
Yeah.
acres.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, great, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
You all set there?
Yes.
Okay. The direction of proposed surface water drainage across the site and from the site with assessments of impact on downstream properties. And Jesse's notes here, stormwater management plan and report combines rain gardens and infiltration trenches to promote infiltration on site. Tab 3, that's where I couldn't find a tab anywhere in this.
That's
Needs
the,
more-
from the original middle.
Yeah, the minutes.
Yeah, so the green is your new submittal information.
Okay, stormwater plan for north section and stormwater calculations in supplemental binder. So we did see that in both the large plan and one of the smaller ones, right?
Yep. Be the last pull-out one.
And Greg, I'm just noticing that it looks like you resubmitted the south stormwater plan. Is that different at all?
I would say it should replace the prior one, and the difference being is through the stormwater narrative and calculations, we updated to where it would be permanently dedicated buffers. Where that prior one just showed the grading and the stormwater features, we added the width and depth of buffers, which produced through the stormwater calculation. So that's the substance of the change. If you look along the west property line and other places below, the widths and depths of dedicated wooded buffers show up. That's the difference.
So we should just throw out the former south section plan and use this one, Greg.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Great. And in the title block, Greg has included the sort of original date of January 26th and then the revised date of March 16th on sheet C2. That's helpful. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, yeah.
And then the north plan, I see that's new.
I think they met this criteria, correct?
I agree. Yeah, I think that there's material there for us to review. Not that we had to do that, review it today, but that
Right, and, you know,
It's there.
and we'll talk about peer review as well a little bit later. We asked for screening to be shown around the dumpster area. And where's that on the plan exactly, Greg?
You're going to have in the plan sets a revised part of one of your other questions, and to keep down on paper production, we combined the request to show sewer and water routing with where the refuse would be on site. And so you have a revised utility plan as well. C-U, CQ.
T4?
Yep.
Okay.
And that we'll see the refuse pads, Rs denoted throughout, and then the detail of how they would be, I would say, shielded in the upper right.
Fence, how tall is the fence? I didn't, 8 foot. Everybody all set with that one?
I just haven't found it yet. I mean, I've got the drawing, but I don't see the refuse pad numbers.
Yeah, and what I just noticed is that the Rs and Ds are interchanged, so it's a small
Okay.
gray U. You'll see a D1, D
Yep, I see
whatever.
that.
and
I see the Ds. Great.
I
Okay.
thought we were taking, they contain refuse, but they're dumpsters, so you can
I
use an
see.
R or a D.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
This is one of the areas where I feel we have to possibly explore one other issue. Is that recently the Bangor Daily News in March had an article about camping propane canisters, and they're difficult to dispose of in the state of Maine. And they are considered a hazardous waste, and campgrounds produce voluminous number of these cans that they might be cooking with on their Coleman or other type of stove. So I'm feeling that there should be something in this as to how they plan to collect and dispose of these canisters as hazardous waste.
Greg, have you given that any thought?
Yeah, we have, and most places have a contracted service that comes in and replaces them. If you have a grill or that, they drive through, they disconnect it there's no mass storage of it. You're allowed to have your 10-gallon or 20-gallon tank, and as a service to them, to the small ones, they can go through and replace them. And just like if you go to a rental, I don't know, that your service. So it's something that they can contract outside with Acadia Fuel or somebody local that comes in and swaps them out. There's no storing on site. And then the other propane is just like you would have on your buildings. Those require regulations and similar to like we would all have. So that's how we've talked about handling. I don't know if James then want to add to it, but it's an outside service that would be come through and offered to them.
For the small canisters?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying on the ones that run a charcoal grill type gas grill and hot water heaters. And I'm referring to those ones that are about 8 inches long. They're green cylinders. They probably weigh 5 pounds or so. And you buy them in hardware stores, Home Depot, or camping supply stores.
Like you might have for a torch.
You have for a torch, or you have for those 2-burner camping stoves. Those are the ones that are presenting a problem for disposal in Maine. And the article I read in the Bangor.
They're a problem in an article we read. I guess there is a recycling. We've provided refuse and recycling. It's a good question. I hadn't read the same article, but we have talked about what we're doing with regular propane. The smaller ones carry in, carry out. I mean, I guess we expect people to be responsible, and we can certainly provide a facility for it.
So what happens is somebody just throws a couple of these in their dumpster?
Well, or just leaves them at the campsite. I mean, I don't think you can just hope they're going to do it. You may get stuck with some on the grounds. I can't see how you wouldn't. And
well, we have provided in the refuse, you'll notice that same thing has a dumpster and a screen, and we've provided a side for that and a side for recycling. And so if people have recyclings, they can bring them, we can take care of them. That's the reason for the second side, instead of just having a single dumpster in there, because we all are one bin all in, but we have a side for recycling. I mean, I guess that's a contemplated sort of solution.
I've understood the green cans are not recyclable.
Yeah, I would say from like a site design, it feels like that space is probably adequate. But from a sort of operational thing, which is a little bit outside the purview, but I think Jeff brings up a great point, which is just that like we would like, I guess, I don't know if we have like a soft recommendation or something that the operators think through these canisters, which can be a problem if not dealt with. You can't just throw them in the regular recycling with everything else, or the one bin all in.
Sure.
Doesn't work.
I'm not satisfied with the soft. I want an answer to this, a plan that's going to be done so we don't have this issue in our the Southwest Harbor transfer station or other places where these things are going to end up, and they present quite a hazard. And I just want to know that there's a plan there to handle them.
I guess, Jeff, I don't know when you read the article in the paper. We don't have a prepared answer for you. We're happy to come up with a program that meets the standards in the ordinance if we can have a chance to look at the ordinance, which standards are applying to that, and then provide a response that satisfies you. Lawson, I'm not sure what criteria in the ordinance we're satisfying. I guess it's the storage of hazardous wastes. We're predicting somebody's going to bring these things in, and that is somehow something we need to cover on our application. I guess I feel that it's a request that we haven't handled before, and we're happy to look at it. However the board wants to handle it, we'll I guess adjust our programming.
Jesse, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it would, we'll need to, the board get the hazardous, which is under the next step, not completeness. But under the performance standards. So if Greg wants to.
I mean, we're so noted. I think that you guys, yeah, I was just looking if the ordinance actually defines hazardous waste in it. Just to understand,
Page 25, I believe.
Yeah, I was wondering what it defined it as. It's not in the regular one. I think you pose a good question. We can address it in any way the board sees fit, whether that's through completeness or public hearing. We do have a exhibit for completeness.
My sense is, and I understand where this issue is coming from, but my sense is no one really addresses this. I mean, we have a huge national park here. There's a campground just down the road. I think people that use these at their house throw them in the trash can. No, are these actually defined as hazardous waste? And if so, is it illegal if I use it in my yard, is it illegal for me to just throw it in the trash? I don't know. Can anyone answer that?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
For my research, yes, it is illegal to throw it in the trash.
Wow. I mean, that's interesting, because I got to tell you, they're ubiquitous.
Oh, I know that. And if
I don't know if anyone getting thrown in jail for putting one in the trash. It's just, and I'm not saying that's right, but it's just odd to bring it up here with this particular application when I suspect like I said, there's a campground around the corner. I guarantee you, right in this town, we don't make them do anything different with that.
That campground's not before it's for approval.
I get it, but you have to, it's interesting to bring it up. I just don't know the solution. It feels like you're asking this applicant to solve like a wider environmental problem that you read in the Bangor Daily News. That's just my gut.
No, I believe there are ways that they can be disposed of, and I want to.
So what are they?
I think they just like, I'd like to say that we would like to first, I understand the nature of it, but in the definition of hazardous special wastes, it's materials by standards of federal state agencies hazardous special. We know that we do a lot of underground and above ground storage tank permitting through the state's fire marshal, that there's different classifications of that hazardous. And when your volumetric storage gets to a certain level, that's when you trip into it. So I think the question's there. Obviously, we don't have a great answer because it's obviously a global problem if it was in the Bangor Daily. And so we can be prepared to develop a program. Obviously, we're a bit surprised by it, but I think that if it's a unilateral concern of the board, we're willing to address it. If it's an isolated concern, we'll consider it as comments and try to figure out a program that can actually maybe begin to help a problem that may be bigger than we're able to solve.
Well, obviously, I feel we should at least have the applicant take a look to see if there's a solution to make an attempt at it. he comes back and says there is no solution for it, and all the other campgrounds don't have an answer, fine, but if there is a solution out there, I think we should look at it and incorporate it in our approval, if that's what we come down to at the end of the day, that this is appropriately taken care of.
If I can make a brief comment, this is John Pottle. I'm the attorney representing the applicant. It's a very good question, and it's not unique, as I think the board recognizes, to this situation. As someone who camps, I encounter the same thing individually with my little MSR isobutane. What do I do with it? And it is an issue. So I think what we could do is I don't necessarily think it's a completeness issue, but certainly first thing you usually look at is the active and licensed transfer stations to see whether or not they accept these type of canisters or particular types. Some do, some don't. If they have that type of available collection and it's feasible to do, I'm sure that's something we would look into. Some companies have different protocols to take them back or have instructions on how they can recycle. That obviously depends on the type of canister and the brand, if you will. But I think that's something that we could look into, provide more information to the board. But again, I don't think we're going to be able to solve the camping stove problem that is, nation and worldwide, but we can certainly take steps to see what might be possible to mitigate those types of issues. In addition, obviously, just to encouraging or directing any guests or users to be responsible in their use of those types of camping fuels or canisters. So that's something as Greg was saying, we can certainly look at that further.
Yeah, I think it's something, really, if it's a issue that is bigger than we've considered, I think being novel in an approach that can make a solution to make a place better is something worth looking at, particularly if it's an issue. And obviously I was not prepared for that question because I hadn't really considered it. So I think it's a good question. We don't have an answer at the very moment. I'm not even clear if those ones are regulated in the ordinance, but I think it's a problem. I'd like to be able to give a chance for, a tangible or say enforceable response that is responsible and sort of consistent with what the rules and regulations are.
Diane, you're here to advise us. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think that it doesn't come under quite so much the submission requirements as it comes under the actual substantive review. Later on, there's a section where you're going to look at hazardous material, and if it is considered to be a hazardous material, you could review it, ask questions more about what they could put into place. But I don't know if it really comes under hashing out now what the answer is. It's not really a submission requirement.
Makes sense to me. Anybody else? Jeff?
No, I appreciate that's going to be looked at. And I don't care which bucket it falls into, just so long as we make an attempt to address the issue. So, I don't want to hold up the completeness process on this item, but I don't want to ignore this item either. So if we're going to put it over, that's fine with me. I want to present as an issue that concerns me and just have it. I think it's easier on the applicant to know it comes up tonight versus when they go down to the next process, and then it's going to delay it further. So it's really putting a checklist out there of something else to look at that I will certainly be looking at. I think the board will be curious as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting issue. It's one I wasn't even aware of, actually, but it does make sense that it could cause problems. And I know that when I go to the Southwest Harbor Transfer Station, there's no place for me to dispose of propane cylinders of any kind. So
if you do a Google search, which I did, I was curious, a lot of transfer places say, fine, poke a hole in it, drain it out. but then you read the cans, they don't poke a hole.
I'm not gonna poke a hole in those things.
And Coleman actually came out with a solution, but none of the states sort of wanted to do it. So that it's a gray area, and I respect what Greg is saying, but I believe there is an approach to collecting them so they don't end up in our landfill and present a hazard when they get crushed at where we start processing our waste. And that's all I'm really concerned about.
Okay, so we're agreed that it really is not affecting our completeness review tonight, but it's something that the applicant will give thought to and address at some point. Right, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a question I haven't heard, and I think that, like I said, if we can all make things better in a way, whether that's through policy or sort of making facilities for people to act a little bit more responsible, I like that. We could be novel in that. I think it's a good question for sure.
Thank you
Okay,
for looking at it.
Yep.
thanks. And so we're okay with the dumpster screening then, I take it. Or the refuse container screening, however you want to look at it.
D's and the R's.
Okay, location, dimensions, and materials to be used in the construction of proposed driveways, parking and loading areas, and walkways. Any changes in traffic flow onto or off site. And we had asked about showing where the pavement started and stopped on the utility plan. It's on the utility plan in the supplemental binder. So that's C4 again, I take it, right?
Correct.
Okay. And also the MDOT put that road opening permit here in Tremont, Maine, and not somewhere in Piscataquis County.
Said I had to drive to Piscataquis to pick it up.
I hope you charge mileage.
Definitely.
Okay, so.
Greg, just,
Go ahead, Lawson.
yeah, and this is more of a performance question, but did you, and maybe this is just sort of like a heads up that we might ask you about this when we're going through the performance, but I'm curious about the grading of the roads and the steepness of a gravel road. And I see that you've included the slope of the road as it changes throughout. And so one of the questions is like, is the road too steep for gravel? And I don't think you have to answer that tonight, but that'll be a question that'll probably come up in the future.
Okay, I can appreciate that, and we can talk about it.
You certainly gave us enough information for us to review it in the future. So I think that's complete.
Are we satisfied this condition's been met then? Okay. Moving along, location, dimensions, and ground floor elevations of all proposed buildings or building expansion proposed on the site. See that you included elevations in one of these plans here in your supplement. And I have some questions about that.
Are you on 8.4?
I'm on a C5.
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 My first question is cabin elevation. We don't show an elevation, we just show a picture of a cabin.
Yeah, so the context of that discussion, I believe with Lawson, Wilson was, we would be concerned if roof peaks were stretching above the trees, and even Mr. Young had stated, wow, how big are these buildings? With a building that contained fitness equipment, where is that ridge gonna lie? And so when we talked about elevations, we were talking about the heights of them. But Mark, to your question specifically, the exhibit was catered towards the request of the board for the last meeting. And we have shown on the plan itself, the stormwater plans, all the major finished floor elevations of the structures. Individually for the cabins, which you know, and if you've seen, we want to situate them amongst trees, right? We're gonna put them up on pads and adjust them to make sure they match the wooded feel of it. So, you know, we provided the elevations of them in how the elevation would be as an architectural description of elevation. So, if I've misinterpreted those entire discussions, I'm all ears.
I think you interpret that correctly, but I see that little disclaimer down in the bottom left-hand corner. with very, very, very small print. It's hard for me to read.
Yep.
And basically it's saying that maybe the finished elevations or the finished buildings will not look like this.
I think we're saying that if the difference, if we're doing a 2-story or 3-story building, if you want true architecturals, that was not the context. It was, the discussion said, we have to be very careful on what architectural elements we request from applicants. And we said, how big are these structures? How tall and how wide? This is what we intend to do. If a roof is a 6'1" versus a 4, yeah, I think that flexibility in these cabins and structures, I think, is perfectly reasonable and within the ordinance. Whether we're going 4 stories or 2 stories was the context. So if you'd like to see more, I'm happy to supplement it. We took that discussion as, what do these buildings look like? Are we talking about monsters? No, we're not. This is what we're talking about.
Well, I understand that, and maybe I'm off base here. I expected to see the actual description of the building, how tall it's going to be, what the exact elevation is. But we're not really seeing that.
We put the heights all along the edge of those buildings, right? 10-9, 10-9, 10-9.
But not for the cabin. I think that's what Mark's
Well, one's
saying.
for the cabin, but building plans are approximate to show potential heights. The actually constructed buildings will meet current land use standards at time of permitting. Excuse my reading here, but
Yeah, you're fine. I get it. Yep.
roof pitches, materials, and architectural design will vary. This is to demonstrate design intent to the board for off-site visual impacts as described during previous hearings. Yeah, we were concerned about that. So we have no guarantee that this is really reflects what's going to be built. It's kind
I
of like
guess-
close enough.
Yeah, face value, we're giving you a fair approximation of what we're doing without delving into every little roof pitch. It's not that we want to do any switch. We're just saying, hey, these are 1-story structures. They're relatively small. They're in the forest. I don't think we're overcommitting, and rather that's, I think, just within the context of what's allowed in the ordinance is people to have a little flexibility from land use to building permit. There's no malicious intent to not give you what was described. It was actually to satisfy your need, but in fairness, allow a little bit of flexibility when they're built and they pick their options and that stuff, but not to be, I guess I'm going back circular again. I'm glad to hear from what the other members of the board may have interpreted as necessary. And then, it was catered around height. That was our interpretation.
Board members, any comments?
Yeah, I think, Greg, the reason for the question is because in a prior application, the way it played out, the issue was about buffering and what sight lines were going to look like and what it was going to look like from adjacent properties. And the challenge became both for the abutters and the board when in that other application, I forget what language they used, but there was a question as to exactly what the height was going to be, and it seemed to change over time. So it made it virtually impossible for anyone to know so to get a sense of exactly what was going to be where and what the height was going to be, so that we could tell, okay, if we put a berm here or whatever, that's basically going to cover the sight line from the folks next door. I think that's the nervousness and the why Mark is asking that question.
Yep.
Because it felt a little bit like a moving, in some other applications, it's felt a little bit like a moving target. Now you said a little bit. So if it's a little bit of a moving target, like a foot, great. If it's, 5 feet, I don't know. Then that changes your sight lines. So that's the genesis of it.
Okay. I appreciate that, Brett. And I just to respond to that, Jeff, if I could, I think we understood that as well. That's why we're very careful to dimension the heights. And the only comments we had were more on architectural elements. That what you just said resonated with me. And our footnote was to say, hey, give us some flexibility on a trim detail or a roof slope, but we were very careful understanding the exact same conversation you just repeated to make sure we dimensioned the heights. Because that's exactly what it was. So if the board, there's no miscommunication, I think we wanted, if we needed some specificity that these are the heights we're going for with these structures, we're happy to do that at the time of the discussion. If you'd like to see more, we're entertaining that. I think we're saying the same thing, and we wanted to express that height evaluation that you just did. So, and I understand the background. I appreciate that.
Brett, thank you for explaining me better than I could myself.
And I think you answered my question. You know, they talk about building envelopes in 2 dimensions. I was going to suggest a building box in 3 dimensions. And so can I assume what you're putting in as heights is sort of the max the building would be? Because we're not an architectural review board. So, you know, what your trim is and so forth is not meaningful to us. But the height would be. And so I was rather than the building envelope, a building box. So yeah, it's going to look like this, but it's going to be no higher and no wider, no deeper than 3 dimensions versus 2 dimensions. Does that make myself clear?
Yeah, it makes yourself clear. I think that if we're able to, you know, I think we're reasonably close. I think we're gonna like some flexibility in the compliance section to say, okay, we're really gonna be 11 feet. I'm not going to 35 feet with cabins. I'm just trying to make sure we have that flexibility. So let's so note we have an exhibit, and I'm not trying to discount it, but if there's something during the discussion that says, okay, how tall are these cabins? This is what we said the cabins are going to be tall. I haven't presented anything else. We can stand behind that. If you say, well, my next question is going to be, well, the impact height of a structure for us becomes a moving target. If the ordinance allows a 30-foot building and we're coming through and you're going to tell us it has to be only 16, well, that creates a moving target for applicants too. So I'd like to consider what you say. I'd like to talk to the applicants because they've got budgets and what they're working for towards units, and make sure I don't commit at this stage on a submission application that flattens a reasonable sort of structure that they've been working towards getting. And that's my only hesitation. I'm an open book. It will not be elusive, but that's why I question, okay, we gave some heights. We like some flexibility in architecture. The board saying, based on our history, we might need a little more. I understand that, and I'd like to be able to maybe build your confidence on that on a compliance type issue. I understand the roots from everybody, how they came to be, and you know, we stand behind the merit of our plans. But before I say, yeah, the maximum height is going to be 30 or what's in the ordinance, that was our intention. So I'll defer back to the board.
I think, Greg, it puts us in a little bit of a quandary. We've asked for elevations and we're getting, it could be this, but it could be something else. And so is the application complete?
You have an exhibit that shows the elevations of all the buildings, and the note was talking about architectural elements. We stand behind the application, Mark. My only, again, was saying if you want us to commit to, you know, the absolute height for each one else, I'm able to do. I just can't do it on the fly to say what that is. We have a plan that shows the heights of all the buildings in there. We're happy to stand behind it.
Diane, you have any thoughts on this?
So I guess the question is whether they have submitted what's called for in the ordinance, which again calls for the location, dimensions, and the ground floor elevations of all the proposed buildings or any expansion. So that's really the question. Does this meet that criteria? And I guess what you're getting at is, are these going to be the final ones, or is there flexibility built in later for you when you're doing your substantive review, whether that's going to change and whether you have to come back?
Okay. I mean, I doubt if they're going to all of a sudden build a skyscraper here.
We want to be as specific as possible too. So if I'm reading the ambiguities and absorbing the fact that specificity is going to be our friend by the time this all comes down, particularly if we need to look at it at different avenues of either other boards or other jurisdictions. So I'm reading that in and saying, if there's levels I'm comfort of commitment to heights that I'm expressing, we will be much more committal to establish that level of comfort.
Board members? Any thoughts?
I mean, I'd be inclined to move forward and find it complete, but I would just let the applicant know. I mean, the way it ties in is with our ability to determine whether the buffering is adequate. If we don't know the heights, we can't do that. And that will be at the next review, not completeness, but the substantive review. So I would just, and that's what has hung up some in the past. So, but I mean, and so that's the kind of risk that you're kind of, going to need to deal with. And so that, I mean, that's just it. I think they probably meet for completeness. They just need to understand that if it's still wishy-washy and we don't really know when it gets to the point where we're trying to figure out whether the buffering plan is adequate, it's just something where, you just get stuck.
Makes sense. Anybody else, Lawson?
Yeah, I guess a couple of comments. I'm looking at your note, Greg, in the bottom, and feel like that first sentence, if instead of saying building plans are approximate to show potential heights, I think the potential is a sort of a strange word. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. But if you actually showed what the maximum heights are, that would make it much easier for us to review. And I recognize totally that you want some flexibility, and I guess I would advise you to just sort of build that flexibility in below your maximum height. So just whatever if you think that your buildings are going to be between 10 and 12 feet, say it's a maximum of 12 feet, or say it's a maximum of 13 feet. Now, then the question becomes will those present buffering concerns? And I guess my hope is that for most of the buildings, it's non-issue, but maybe for one or two of them that are close to the property lines, that are up on a hill, then we do need to focus on it, and maybe figuring out what that maximum height is ends up becoming really important. The other comment is about the cabin elevations, which I don't think you included. You've got all these great heights on this sheet C5, but you actually don't show how tall the cabins are. And they're also the only buildings that don't have finished floor elevations. And I feel like you could probably deal with that somewhat easily by telling us that the finished floor elevations are within some amount of the grade line that they're placed on, and they have a maximum height of whatever their maximum height is. And that would be able to tell us, okay, so for this one, that if it's the maximum height, if the finished floor is the maximum height above the grade, then we could figure that out. Right now, we don't have enough information. You could end up putting these on stilts that are 12 feet in the air, and we just don't know that for the cabins themselves. Every other building is very clearly drawn, but the cabins aren't.
So the cabins
Greg,
were,
is there a reason you didn't put? It seems like a simple thing for you to put the elevation for that one, the cabin.
they were similar to the office and all the other ones. That was our intent, that they're very similar in height to those. And
Great.
that's,
Then you don't even have to draw them.
I
You
like-
can just
I like to generate paperwork when I actually said, okay, well, these were modeled after like the office in this wooded cabin feel. And so they're similar to the other structures on the left-hand side of that page. And as you were mentioning, Lawson, that the idea of heights and maximum height, we know, like when you go over and you guys, I don't know if you go to Seawell Campground or any of the other campgrounds, Mount Desert Campground, we like to build them up enough so we don't have to dig in. And part of my there is saying, and I don't want to, the practicality of when you put these on pads or posts, that actually contributes to the exact height. And so I understand the board sort of hesitancy. Happy to delve into a little bit more of that in illustrative exhibits during the public hearing phase of it and compliance. I think the concern is there. We have an exhibit and some similar to some of the other great questions, we'll consider them. And we're not going to have, we don't want a moving target because we want to be very specific. And so those questions are important. We hadn't considered, and oftentimes we look at this so long and like, okay, that's what they are. But from the outside, sure, we can commit to a maximum height that these things are so we can evaluate the buffering. I will comment that the heights that are on here our representative of them, and we can have more information about how they're supported and there, so you can have a wider picture weigh in on compliance part of the application.
And what is the foundation for the cabins?
Foundation for the cabins would be posts in some locations with 1 or 2 steps up in, and maybe in other places we'd have a little crushed stone pad.
It's also possible that, like, if there's 1 or 2 cabins that are sort of the worst case scenario, they're the ones that are highest in elevation and closest to property line, that just diagramming that to show, yep, this is the one that's most likely to encroach on neighbors, and this is how we're dealing with it. It's this tall.
Okay.
These are the trees that are near it. It's that might be able to address it. It's also the kind of question that we might end up asking a peer reviewer to sort of look at the application and, like, what are those worst case scenarios? So,
Thank you.
Board, what do you think? You willing to accept this and move on?
Yes,
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I am too.
Mark,
Yes,
if I can interrupt for one moment.
Sure.
Mhm.
On the previous, I didn't realize we'd gotten past the one about the parking and so forth. And I had a couple questions on that. Do you want me to bring them up at
Can
the
we-
end? Zooming and makes it a little bit difficult to follow exactly where you were.
right.
Before we hop off of this, Jeff, I don't want to interrupt you, but actually would like to talk about this plan for one more second, if you would allow me to. We looked for, of course, there's a lot of financial planning and working with vendors for either these being built or locally or brought to site, and they have different models of how they're going to build these. We used a footprint in there, and there is a error on the sheet you have, and I'm going to say that maybe if it was simply an oversight by us. And Jeff, I figured at the beginning of the meeting, this is going to be the first thing that came up. We wanted to find the dimensions that worked with the site. We wanted the cabins to be a certain length and width to fit with the topography and how they could get into the site. This plan has the dimensions of we're intending for the cabins, but all of the vendors have an option for cooking in there, which we are not doing. And we've permitted this as cabins. And the definition of cabins in Tremont is for sleeping accommodations, hotels, motels, cabins, sleeping accommodation. In the fine print on there, it does say microwave on that footprint. That is not our plan. I have corrected that and given them, and it's as preposterous as it sounds. It was small and it's in there. We found it when I wanted to find the one of the vendors we were looking at for their width and dimensions that we're choosing. His option had a microwave, and if you zoom in, you'll see it says microwave in there. We are not having cooking facilities. That's stated emphatically throughout the application, and that one elevation has it in there. I have stricken that from the record and provided a master copy of that for the town file. So I think.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
Did you
I was going
also-
to ask about that because it says full kitchen.
Gone. It was the size. It was one we had looked at and priced and worked for the footprint we were looking for to get into the topography. And it's a simple oversight. And I didn't catch it until I was adding up square footages and stuff for impervious calcs and stuff. And I was zooming in on dimensions like, oh, this option is still there.
So no cooking facilities, period.
Correct. None. And I've been vehement. It's mentions in the application that we're cabin. The definition of cabins clearly says for sleeping accommodations only. There's nothing other than that. And I'm being very sort of transparent with it. We picked it up. We saw it. So.
Jeff, you had a question about parking?
Yeah, Greg, going back to the building that's farmhouse that's there in the barn. And how did you compute the parking spaces for that area?
Let's see. That's a good question. I can probably put my finger on it. I won't know the page, but in the original submittal, access locations and spacing. there is a parking calculation. And we used similar, so let's get to it. And I actually put a table in there for, I can probably find it electronically. Oh yeah. So if the binder goes in order of the performance standard, it's after E, which is internal circulation. Then you have F, parking layout and design. General store, 2 for staff, 2 for staff, 16 seats, and we calculated 6 spaces. Understanding that it's a store that's accessed by the guests. It's not coming in Dunkin' Donuts, grab your coffee and go. So we used similar to where you have usually 1 parking spot per 4 seats at a table for coffee shop or that. So we gave you that calculation.
So I think our code calls for 2 spaces per 200 square feet of store. I'm calling off the top of my head, so but this store is not open to the public.
Yeah, it's a general store for the guests only.
Okay, so my question, there's a conflict between what the applicant originally says in the application that they're applying for as a campground, and the facilities are to be used for guests of the campground. And then there's articles in the paper, there's petitions online that talks about bike trails, walking trails, and the pool and at Santa Village, that's all going to be available to the general public. And my concern is that's not, and those statements were made by the applicant or family members, but doesn't agree with what the application says it's going to be. So if there is going to be more public access for bicycles and walking and using the pool, then we have regulations in our land use of parking. So the pool will require more parking, et cetera, if the public's going to be using these facilities. So I guess I'm looking for clarity so I know whether we have parking handle or not. Who's going to be using the various facilities and trails and so forth on the property.
Good question, Jeff. So we were pretty consistent. I don't think anything you've stated out is different than what's in the application. Is that what I believe you did say? We did not state that we're in the application anyplace. So the application before you.
No, that was the point I made earlier tonight, is
Yep.
there things that come up. The application, your filing and the application seem to be in pretty good concert, and we're just refining it sort of as we go
Sure.
through the last meeting and this meeting.
Okay.
But then when I see other things being played out by the applicants, other statements, I am wondering what we're really looking at. And should
Yeah.
we be looking at more than we are?
Well, it'd be great if we could fit as many things and have this as public access. I think we have our hands full at the moment with a campground, with a general store. That is what's in the application. I'm going to pause and say, I don't know how many people actually use it as an amenity, but we go to Seawall campgrounds, paved, the park's been closed. It's a fantastic place to walk and have sort of some sort of activity now, especially when the campground's there. If we got to a position where that could be worked out in the future, we would. It's not part of our application. Specific to your question though, that's an off-season sort of event, right? So you're not competing with the cabins, you're not competing, and that's why it works at Seawall Campground right now. We've considered that how this eventually could integrate and become an amenity that people would take advantage of. I think the logistics of that haven't been worked out or considered because we obviously applying for what is in the application is a campground. And so anything that's not in the application, I don't know anything about. I could say there's been discussion of how it was. We've talked that, wow, that's really nice. That's an amenity that Southwest Harbor or people in Tremont all go there in the off season. So answer to parking, it wouldn't compete with this because of the seasonal nature of it. And secondly, I would just say it's not part of the application.
Greg, this has been a concern of mine as well, and I wasn't going to bring it up at the completeness hearing. I thought we could deal with that later, but since Jeff's brought it up, I specifically asked you either at the pre-application conference or our last meeting when we started going over the complete list review, whether the public was going to have access to the pool, and you told me no. You told the board no. And yet we have at least family member, if not the applicant themselves, saying that the pool will be open for other people to use, people who are not campers. And that is a concern because it really means a greater impact and it means more parking.
Well, I don't change what I had said, and I guess I think in a perfect world, the owners really would like everything to come out and this become a community amenity to everybody, but we're not even there. That's not part of the application. And I would think that if we desired to change the use we've applied to, the ordinance says we've got to come back. So I'm going to stand on the merits of my application and James is going to read me the riot act later, but I it's not what we're applying for. Again, if there was any conditions on any decisions, it's a campground. It's made for the guests. That's been the programming. And I, you know, if there's been certain discussions outside of it, I think it's in a world of optimism, but it's certainly not in the application.
So for the application that's before us, you can guarantee that there's no public access. The use of the facilities and the use of the campground is for paying campers only. Is that correct?
That is the application. Yes. Yep.
And that's what's going to happen.
Correct. And I think any other event that we had a campground and we said we were going to open it for public and charge a fee for the pool or do something else as you suggest, I think we have to be back there. That's exactly I think the concern you're issuing. Hey, we're basing this application on this, but I'm hearing these other things. The strength in the ordinance is that if we have to do something else by through code in your ordinance, we'd have to come back and change. And you'd say, well, how do you handle all the parking? How you handle that? And that's a good question. And I'm not what to be, you know, I feel like we're addressing something we haven't applied for, but the commitment's there.
Greg, the confusion only comes because, you know, the applicant is quoted in the paper saying the pool's available and the petition online says other things are going to happen there. So obviously it leads to confusion to us as a board as to, you know, is what we hear from the applicant on the paper and the petition, is happening, or is your application? And I'm glad to hear you're standing by your application and that's what you're applying for. I'm just trying to make this this is causing a lot of issue for people. And so I'm trying to be sure we're out open about it and talk about it.
Agreed. And understand both sides of it. I think we were very careful because of the ordinance is really strong in places for parking. And I'm going to go even further, which we may talk about now with exterior commercial uses. You can be a campground with accessories, but I think when you decide to be a commercial entity or another business and open it up, you got to meet different lot standards and several different things, which are not part of a campground. So if we applied under a campground, that's a business use. If we open up to do this or that, it's a whole nother ordinance application. If you thread the needle from where you start from, we want to be this through your ordinance, you have to come out like this. If you start in there and you say, we're going to have a campground, but we want to invite the public to do this, invite the public that, it's a whole different application under sort of business uses. And that's not you have before you. So hopefully I've been clear, but the concerns there, and I don't know how to physically address it in a sort of level of confidence to the board. Hopefully our physical testimony provides some assertion to that, along with our application. And we'll certainly entertain more discussion later. The point has been said, and I don't know if the applicants want to chime into that or not, but we'll stand behind it. I hear the concern, and so I'm going to put it in the Rolodex of sort of confirmations and sort of levels of support on how we're going to have further discussions.
Thank you, Greg. I think it's perfectly clear. I think this is a completeness meeting, and that's what we should do. And this topic, while it deserves discussion, it's probably more appropriate for the public hearing format. I mean, there are people that probably would have liked to hear that aren't here because they wouldn't have expected that during a completeness review. So I would just encourage the board and other members to get back on track and move through the completeness review.
Sounds good to me. If no objections, we'll do that.
Very good. Thank you for your answer and frankness.
Welcome. Thanks.
So now we're going on to utilities. 8.4.I, location of all utilities, including fire protection. And we ask that Greg provide us with drawing of where the water and sewer lines are going to go. And they've been added to the utility plan in the supplemental binder. And that again, it's on C5, is it? C3?
C4 with the
Before.
CU.
4, yeah, there we go.
Yep.
We all set with that, folks? You want to take a second to look at that and make sure?
Yeah, let's look at it for a second, see if there are things jump out. Greg, in the legend, I see a square that says pump house. Does that appear in the drawing someplace? Oh, maybe there it is. Little squares where the blue is, the blue line
Yep.
attached to.
Yep, exactly.
I see one of them. Are there more than one?
Let me see. One of the remote wells has a pump house. The other ones are close enough that they can get to a structure for control before they distribute to the site. Let me get to it. Yeah, the one in the RV area that was the only one which we could have external extra tanks. There's one of them.
Near W3?
By W2, correct. Yep.
Oh, and then is there also one next to W4? Or is that a different
W4 is gonna be,
rectangle or black square?
yep, there's a pump house there too. Yep, I'm sorry.
Greg, do you plan on having a generator or generators on site?
No, we haven't considered generators.
Okay.
Yep.
Lawson, are you satisfied? You're still
I'm still looking closely, and I guess I think it's all here. It looks like the underground electric is often in the same trench as the water and the sewer. Is that? I just sort of lose the orange dotted line sometimes.
Yeah, it's in the road. So some of the routing would be I don't want to say economical, but rather than clear more, we could have taken straight shots through the woods and done more clearing, particularly around the perimeter, and opted a little bit longer of the conduits and pipes and put them in the road. They look at this scale to be on top of each other, though they are separated by like 18 inches or whatever in the ground, because of course
Sure.
they can be seasonal as well. So water and sewer can compete at the same elevation. They don't have to be 5 feet deep, and your electrical has to be 3 feet deep. So
And so the water and sewer, the water lines will get drained at the wintertime,
yep, they get blown out.
blown out. Cool. Yeah, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Anybody else? In that case, we'll move on. I think we have one more, right, Jesse?
Yes, that's correct.
Stormwater calculations, erosion and sedimentation control measures, and water quality and/or phosphorus export management provisions. If the project requires a stormwater permit from the DEP, or if the planning board determines that such information is necessary based upon the scale of the project or the existing conditions in the vicinity of the project. And we're looking for the north plan and calculations here. We did talk about that earlier. We do have that.
Mhm. Yep.
And Greg, I see that you submitted a stormwater plan that's pretty thorough. Well, let's see, it's pretty long. I'm not sure how thorough it is because I haven't read it yet, but, and I guess, could you just give a sort of 90-second introduction to it? But, you know, like this isn't, we don't have to review it for anything, but like, can you assure us that it's complete? I guess that's the question for today.
Well, I can assure you that it's probably more complete than your ordinance standards request.
Okay.
The standards in the ordinance say you are required to demonstrate pre and post. It doesn't say what level of evaluation you use. They don't say if it's the 2-year event, the 24-hour event, or the 50-year event. So I believe it's complete because it not only breaks down the internal watersheds, we've accounted for all the watersheds offsite that pass through us. That's the appropriate way to do it. You can't just say, hey, we generate this water, here's a culvert, how do we handle it? There's I won't say dozens, but several watersheds, including a 12-acre and another 5-acre offsite that drains into us. You know, a lot of the developed lands along Kellytown Road drain towards us. It's how do I say it? The detail in it reflects the nooks and crannies of the site. We did not leave a smaller area unidentified in how we evaluated. We evaluated each one in the 25-year event, and then we proceeded to look at implementing best management practices to then help offset flows, maintain them on site. The ordinance, says recommends buffers. We went through and made sure that specificity was included on what the width and dedication of those buffers are and where they are to remain wooded. We do a lot of stormwater plans, and I can say by the topography on this, not necessarily in the steepness of it, but in the variation of the topography, lended itself to what I think is a pretty not only robust but detailed analysis of how to manage it properly. And that result of looking at it that way resulted in us saying, okay, let's put a buffer here. How big's the pond going to be? Where do we get the most potential for grit removing from the road in a heavy wash? And then we went and implemented infiltration rain gardens there. So that's my 90-second spiel, and I'm happy to go in more detail later. And I think we then also, besides the numerical analysis, we have a narrative to which we addressed a quite narrative that addressed every one of the stormwater sort of criteria or performance standards. They mostly rely back on how are we doing it, and the way to figure out how you're doing it is you got to figure out where it's coming from.
Great, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Any other concerns, questions, board members? Okay. I think we're ready. I'll entertain a motion either to find the application complete or not.
I'll move to find the application complete.
All second?
Okay, we have a motion and second on the table to find the application complete for Acadia Woods Lodge. All
I think
in
it's
fa-
Acadia Wilderness Campground.
Wilderness Campground, yeah, I keep getting the name confused, sorry, folks. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Lawson Wilson,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Jeff Young,
Yes.
myself, yes. 4-0. The application is complete. Now we have to discuss a few things and schedule a public hearing, I guess. Site visit. Do we want a site visit?
Yes.
Okay, so we have to schedule that. And also the other thing is a peer review on the engineering, specifically the stormwater management.
Are you
Jesse,
asking, Mark?
Well, I think we should. Do we agree? I think Jesse's going to want a motion. Right, Jesse?
Yeah,
Do we
No.
know? Mark, you're suggesting a peer review on stormwater management?
And perhaps other things, if you think that that's necessary, I'm open.
you just need to, I just want you to make sure that whatever motion you make is because you feel you can't make a decision without the peer review.
Fair enough. Does anybody think we need?
I'm willing to admit I would need some aid from a professional in going through these graphs and charts and have someone explain to me. So I would be in favor of a peer review for supporting us or supporting our knowledge of what's going on.
I agree. Greg has provided us with volumes here of information, and
Yes, he has. Thank you.
I have no.
I was gonna add, we're happy to explain them to you.
Do you get paid by the word, Greg?
Definitely do not.
Okay.
You
Just-
guys are
just-
not all, you guys are not all getting paid tonight, so I definitely do not get paid by the word.
Any other comments on that? I mean,
Well, I mean,
we-
I think one of the things that I heard Greg say is that it's a really dynamic site in terms of how many catchments, sub-catchments there are, which is sort of enough information that I need to know that, oh, this is going to take us a second to wrap our heads around, and it might be worth having. I mean, yeah, I mean, I have every confidence in Greg, but it's sort of prudent for us to have a outside opinion that's not the applicant look at it.
okay, my question is, oh, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
Well, yeah, I guess the other thought of is there might be other issues too that we don't know about. And I guess I'm wondering about the timing for the relationship between the public hearing, the peer review, and then the performance review.
Well, we'll be on a tight schedule, that's for sure. My question, first of all, do we want someone to look exclusively at the stormwater management plan? Or are there other things we want that person or someone else to look at?
Can we wait until the public hearing to answer that question? Maybe the answer is
I
no,
don't think
know. You don't
we'll
think
have
so?
time to get an engineer and have that person be able to do a comprehensive review in time for us to make any decisions.
I think that the, Mark, I know you guys are talking about timelines, but I also think and want to make sure we encourage deliberate, productive decisions and steps in the process. And I know the board is really, I think, vocal about making sure we have that. And I think the ordinance allows for the peer review and the timelines. And so, of course, we want to get there. We also want to be prepared. The last section where it says, we can as mutually agreed upon time schedules, I think allows us some flexibility on that time. It says these timelines can be modified as agreed upon by the applicant and the board. It's there. We don't want to prolong a public hearing and then deliberations, but I think the ordinance allows you to have technical review. It allows you to seek that guidance. It allows us then a response for that. And I think those become important aspects of a public sort of presentation and also part of the compliance. So I would encourage it, and we are agreeable to a timeline that allows for that to happen. And I hope that just weighs in your decision. And I think the ordinance is clear that all time limits provided in the section may be extended by mutual agreement of the applicant and the planning board. Last section in the site SPO, I guess page 10. So I think that gives us flexibility to do it. I heard what the timeframes might be for the next planning board and then next public hearing. I'm not prolonging it, but I think there's a lot of information in there, and we want the record to be as substantial and as complete as possible. And I think that includes the boards, hired consultants weighing in and our ability to respond.
I appreciate that. Jesse, I think under our ordinance, we're supposed to make a decision on the project within 30 days after finding it complete, correct?
Correct.
So Greg, what I hear you saying is you're willing to go beyond those 30 days so that we can make sure that we get a thorough review from an engineer. Is that correct?
First, that is my contention. I would like the board to interpret the section and agree in its interpretation that the last sentence that says all time limits provided in this section refer to all of the time limits under section B of the SPO, not just the predecessor. And I'm basing that on how it's organized. And I think, and I know Mr. Pottle has looked at this carefully, I think that allows us the time for the requested peer review response and scheduling the public hearing. But I wouldn't do that unless the board made a determination that that time limit provided in the section does address that 30-day window. It says,
What page you on?
I'm on page 10 of the SPO.
At the top.
Under six bumps out all time limit after 6, all time limits.
Mhm.
Place the item in a substantial review within 30 days or at the next scheduled board meetings of the prior page. 1 through 6, I believe, are addressed by all the time limits expressed in the organization of the language of section B. All time limits provided shall be extended upon mutual agreement. That's our interpretation, but I don't want to interpret that section for the board.
Well, under 5, actually on that same page, near the end there, and I thought that's what you were going to refer to, the deadline by which the planning board shall take final action on the application as specified in B may be extended, which extension shall not exceed 30 days after the board is able to conduct an online inspection. Okay, well, that's okay, that's a site plan, okay. I mean, not site plan, not site visit.
Just
I
if,
mean,
just
I
to
think I
check.
tend to agree with that interpretation. It's kind of a, if you look at how the hierarchy of the thing's set up, that particular sentence, all time limits, it has no number, it's all the way out to the edge of the page, which suggests to me that it applies to everything above it.
Mhm.
You know, as a practical matter, you know, if we don't act, I don't think that means that it's automatically granted. So, but I think we can agree to extend them, as long as, you know, we probably ought to put it in writing. But
Right. I would agree with that. Diane, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, no, I agree. You definitely can set your own time limit if both parties are, wanting to do that and extend the time periods. So you could agree mutually to do that.
If we extend it, do we need to extend it to a certain date?
I think there's flexibility for you to agree as long as it's mutual. So because at this stage you might not know how long it's going to take to get those peer reviews in. So that's kind of, if you're going to try to stick to a time limit, it might not be possible to meet that.
Okay, that was my
But
concern.
you could agree, to certain outlines and then criteria to set the actual dates once you get, a peer review in.
Greg, are you agreeable to that?
I am.
Getting a
My
date?
what I was looking at in calendar, thinking the dates in your ordinance as the public hearing would be, and I'm just putting it out there that we would say there could be a consideration of a motion that allowed for the public hearing to be scheduled if the peer review was in by X date and the applicants were able to review and submit any response at least 7 days advance of Y. I think that allows concerned abutters. It allows the board to digest what comes back from peer review and allows us to respond so that the public hearing is fully vetted. That may be too soon to say like Wednesday, the 29th. I don't know what your regular scheduled meeting is, but that would allow us then to make sure we had our response into you by the 21st. Oh, am I looking at the right day or am I the wrong day? 28th is a Wednesday.
Talking April, right?
Yeah, April, correct.
Their regular meeting would be the
Oh,
20.
27th. So if peer review was back by the 16th or the 15th, and the board had adequate information by the, it would have to be by the end of the day, Monday, the 19th. That's just one way to get there.
The dilemma, one of the dilemmas we're in here is that Jesse is going to call engineers tomorrow and ask if they could do this. We don't know if they can do that and what the time frame is. Correct, Jesse? Have you spoken to him? Yeah, okay.
I think it's been handled in the past, and I think that if that occurs, a condition in your motion makes that a condition of the time frame. I think we have to set a time frame going forward, I think. Because this meeting acts as the notification in an instance, I believe, and maybe I'm way out of my league here with all the attorneys on, but I think we should set a date with conditions that they should be met. And if they're not, we can always show up there and ask for a continuation. And then we would have to, if those weren't met, we would have to re-advertise properly for the public hearing later on.
So are we trying to set the public hearing for the 27th and then kind of work back from there? Is that what I'm hearing with conditions?
That was one suggestion, just how to maybe pick a date and figure out how we get everybody's fair notice.
So I think I heard, and I just want to see if people are comfortable with this. So the 27th, provided that the peer review report is provided to the board no later than, I thought I heard April 15th or 16th.
I would say the 15th is a Thursday, and we would, yes.
And then
we were asking for submissions the Tuesday before, a week before our meeting. So I don't have a calendar in front of me.
Yeah, that would be the 20th. So submission back by the 20th. And if we were to have even 4 or 5 days, it would be the 14th or the 15th that they would be due. They would have the peer review in by the 14th or the 15th. And any sort of response to make the record complete would have to be into the board on the 20th for the meeting to occur on the 27th.
Okay. Well, I can try it.
Hold on one second. Jesse,
Yeah,
do you think we need the peer review before the public hearing? I guess we do. It only
Yeah.
makes sense, yeah. And then the butters can see that, okay.
So I don't want to throw a wrench in this too, but what if we're talking about a site inspection or a site visit?
Site
Yeah,
visit,
that's true. Yep.
we have to schedule that as well.
And that's publicly noticed, right? The public needs to have time. How much time do they need for that, Jesse?
that's just like a regular meeting.
Yep.
Same notification as a regular
Meeting?
meeting, I believe.
It
Let me-
is it possible that, and maybe someone, is there a way to, I mean, I'm seeing the audience and how we're getting there, that we don't want to make any mistakes on it. And so is it appropriate to straw poll these things outside of the meeting, or do we have to set a date tonight? Because we do want the site visit. We want to have those dates.
I think what we can do though is set the site visit independent of the.
Right.
We don't, that's not, because we're just gonna set that, and that's not dependent on anything other than just a, right.
Does the, Red, I was wondering if the site visit has to be notified as a public meeting because of the more than so many members, and that if those advertisement requirements got in the way of my suggested timeline.
A site visit is a public meeting. So we'll have to notice it.
And I would suggest you could do the site visit at your next meeting,
Right, the 6th?
15th.
Oh,
April.
Hold on, if we put something in the paper, notifying, a notice in the paper about the site visit on, for next week's paper, right? We can then meet and do the site visit that following Tuesday, correct?
The 13th you're talking about?
No, advertisement would have to be out on the 30th. Your advertisement would hit the paper on the 31st, right? Or the
Soonest we can get in the paper is, yeah, the 31st.
So then the next
First.
board
April-
member is the 6th, right? Do you guys have a meeting the 6th?
No, the 13th.
13th.
Oh, okay, well, that would work then. And then that would push.
We could always schedule an extra meeting if we feel the need to, first of all.
But if we do a site visit the 13th and then the peer review is due the 14th, that seems fine. It doesn't conflict unless we need the engineer
for the site visit.
for the site visit, and then the engineer needs to incorporate their findings of the site visit in their report.
I think the engineer would benefit from a site visit.
Well, I
Would
guess
you
I want
agree,
to,
Greg?
I would actually want to look at what the ordinance says the peer review is, and I think it's review of technical materials. I guess I don't oppose it, but it hasn't happened in the past that any of the peer reviews visited the site. I think you have the ordinance standards and you have a application that has set, and everything I've heard tonight was related to calculations.
And here I'm going to complicate things further. There's a lot of interest, like I said earlier, in this project, a lot of controversy. Public hearing is going to be difficult, especially if we do it by Zoom, and we might have to do it by Zoom. Because in talking with Jesse today, the number of people who are interested might exceed the limits of the community building as well. So there's also the possibility of needing two-part public hearing like we did with the Pointy Head application.
Are you at a point yet, Mark, of suggesting that we do both parts by Zoom, or two parts in person, or one part Zoom and one in person? Or are we not there yet?
I don't know. I've been watching here. We've had 30, right now we have 25. We've had 30 people here. Do we know the exact, how many we can accommodate at the community building?
I believe it was right around 40 in that range.
And in talking with you today, you said there are people who are not year-round residents who may want to also weigh in.
We've got you have multiple stack of huge letters from people from people that live here, people that summer here, but abutters, and even as far away as like Rummel Road, not necessarily abutters, but there's definitely a lot of interest, and they all want to know when the public hearing is and when they can participate. I do think it will be more than the 30 some that are here tonight.
And you're recommending we do it by Zoom?
That would be my recommendation, yes.
Go ahead, Brett.
But no, it's just, that's a lot. It's going to be interesting on Zoom.
I agree. I don't like doing it by Zoom either, but I don't know.
I mean, ideally, you can do both. You can do, ideally, you would have some sort of process where, you could have a large enough, accommodate as many people as you can, with social distancing, and then also have people be able to call in or participate, but we might not have the audio video capacity to do that. I don't know.
Can we make that work, Jesse?
I mean, it's possible. I mean,
how do we do? I mean, were people participating remotely in the pointy head?
Only Jeff.
Only Jeff,
Yeah.
not the public.
Jeff is people.
Jeff Young.
I just like to chime in that I'm going to say that me personally, Zoom is going to be preferable, and I know you guys may not care, but our applicants are remote themselves, so they'll be visiting remotely, and I'm not terribly excited in getting to a small room with 40 people on mask, no matter what's happening right now. I think we're near the end of it, and I think if there's technology available that we can get a broader audience and meet the technical requirements for a public hearing, it's the better way to go.
Mask and social distancing would be applied. You'd have to do that. So, like we did at the other public hearings.
Well, we'll Zoom it then. So from my perspective, it sounds like the 13th for a site visit, public hearing on the 27th, provided that the peer review is in by close of business on the 15th, and the response is in by close of business on the 20th. And if it's not, then we'll revisit the date of the public hearing.
Right, could we request the 14th at the end of the day instead of the 15th for the peer review?
Okay, sure.
How's that sound, Jesse?
Yep.
Other board members or board members?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think that Jesse asking the engineer, can they turn it around by the 14th, and do they need can they do it without a site visit? And if the answer is, well, whatever, depending on what their answer is, if we have to shift the dates, then we have to shift the dates.
Mhm.
They don't have to advertise a meeting for them to visit the site. And so whether or not that helps their decision or not, I just want to add that there, that we could be there at the same time, but if it met their schedule and they were able to, we can make sure they had access.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
And also remember that Greg did the peer review on Pointy Head, and he did not attend the site visit. So
right,
it is possible to do it that way as well.
Well, he couldn't. The intention there was to attend at one point.
Okay, maybe I don't recall.
I couldn't make it the last minute.
I've been trying to forget about it.
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember either.
So I'm going to move for a site inspection at the next at the next planning board meeting on April 13th at 6 p.m.
Should we make it 5, Brett? Because it starts getting dark around 6, right?
As amended, 5 PM.
Okay.
I'll second the amended motion.
Okay. Have a motion on the table for a site visit.
What,
On,
discussion for a moment?
well, I was going to call for discussion.
Okay,
I was just restating the motion. April 13th at 5 PM. Any discussion?
only a general question. Jesse, do we have any other matters coming up before us that you know of that we'll need to discuss on the 13th, or can this be the only matter?
Not that I know of.
How about Mr. Salisbury? He might come back, huh?
He,
Why, what happened? Was that tonight? I missed that part.
Oh, yeah, we switched that around. There was a pre-application hearing, so
Okay.
it was a conversation, but not a full application yet.
Got it.
and any submittals have to be in 21 days prior to the meeting, so.
Oh, you can't
no.
make that. Then. Okay.
I am expecting an application from Seal Cove Auto Museum. He said he'd have it in this Thursday.
What are they doing?
So if you want to do your site visit and then plan on reconvening, I guess, by Zoom at 6 or here at 6 to do your regular meeting.
The site visit will probably,
Take more than an hour.
yeah, I mean, or maybe it'll take about an hour, but then
Right.
reconvene at 6:30. I don't know. I don't know if we have to.
I don't know if you need to.
Well, I don't know. I guess if we're going to have a public meeting by Zoom, we should have a public meeting by Zoom and let everybody know that.
Yeah.
We can't decide that
Right.
in the woods and then go home and jump on a Zoom call.
Okay, but the motion is for the site visit 5 PM on the 13th, right?
Yep.
Let's deal with that first. Any more discussion? Lawson, in favor?
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
myself, yes. Okay, 4-0. Now, before we move on to the other stuff, do we want to do a Zoom meeting that night too? We don't know whether there's going to be anything before us at this point, right?
Sorry, before,
We don't.
are we finished with Acadia? Do we need to make a motion about Acadia Wilderness?
Yes, we do.
Yes,
Okay,
we do.
let's keep with that, and then we'll figure out how to
Okay.
deal with other business, if that's all
Okay.
right. Chairman, thanks.
Fine with me.
So do we
Brett?
need a motion for peer review? Have we already done that?
No,
I can give that a shot. It's really a motion for a public hearing with a couple of preconditions. So I'll move that we schedule the public hearing for this matter on Tuesday, April 27th at
Do it at 5.
5 PM. Provided that the peer review report is provided no later than close of business on Wednesday, April 14th. And further provided that the response from the applicant is provided to the board no later than the close of business on April 20th. And should either of those preconditions not be met, the board will revisit and reschedule the public hearing.
very good.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, with motion and second on the table, I'm not going to restate that. Brett did such a great job. If nobody minds. Any discussion?
I just want to confirm that it was by Zoom.
Oh, by
Yes,
Zoom?
As amended.
and I guess I would just want to confirm with Greg that the applicant, that makes sense to the applicant, and we have sort of the mutually agreed upon decision.
Yeah, what I heard was part of the sort of where we started. So we have no issues if that comes to be. The timelines seem to be met, and if something goes awry, we could always mutually agree on the 27th to extend it for some reason, and we'll be poised to watch the timelines and submit. So we should be able to do it.
Okay,
And I guess the other sort of question, point of discussion is if we end up needing to change the public hearing date, is that something that the chair and Jesse can do? Do we need a board meeting to do that?
to change the meeting date? I
Right.
believe So,
You think we do need a meeting or we don't need a meeting?
we do.
We do.
Yeah. The easiest thing would probably be to hold the meeting on the 27th and continue it to a new date.
Okay. Okay.
Continue, at that meeting, continue it, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And with this timeline, what is our deadline like for making a final decision?
That you can choose to do it the night of the 27th, or you can, if it's agreed upon that night with the applicant, you could set it for,
The 11th.
Okay,
the last time this happened, the public hearing was so long that the board felt they didn't want to go into the review that evening, so it was scheduled for the following week.
right, and that's a real concern here.
Right.
So
You could
Greg, I think,
Decision that night.
yeah, Greg, I think from what you said before, you would be agreeable to that if it happens, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. If we needed to, the public hearing being what I anticipate as being a longer night, that if we have a separate night for compliance discussions, I think that's maybe how it has to happen.
I will
Yes,
do my best to limit comments, but
No, I think
you know
it's
how that goes.
you have to be. I don't. Yeah, whatever it takes. We want to make sure we're thoroughly heard. I think that, and maybe Mr. Paulo could queue up on this, that I'm reviewing the timelines just suggested. And number 5 on the SPO indicates that page 9 of 29 on the SPO, after the first meeting in which the application is considered, the planning board may hold an on-site inspection review. I guess, and maybe for Mr. O'Connell, if that first meeting being considered is after completeness or prior, it's as soon as the application is complete, the board may schedule a public hearing. And then it says after the first meeting in which the application is considered. Does that indicate we need to have the site walk following a public hearing and then prior to deliberations? I just want to, that one, the term considered is usually after application is deemed complete, so.
Yeah, I think I think it can be kind of a moot point in this situation, because the flexibility allowing the parties to change the timeline by mutual agreement is really the overriding thing. So if everybody is agreeing to this timeline and the site visit before the public hearing, then I think that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions, comments? We have a motion on the table in a second, correct? I'll call for a vote. Lawson,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
okay, myself, yes, 4-0.
Thank you, board.
Mark, can we have a motion on what the board wants the peer review to review?
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to ask the code enforcement officer to contract with a qualified engineer to review the stormwater management report as submitted.
Second.
Motion second on the table to ask have the CEO contact a an engineer to do a peer review on the stormwater report. Any discussion?
One question, Jesse, do you see anything else in the application that you might feel comfortable having someone else look at, other than yourself, or a question might come up that we should include in this?
Only thing I would add for comment wise is I know there's a huge amount of concern regarding traffic. So I don't know if that's something the board wants to get an opinion on or not. I know the public's very concerned about the impact to the traffic along that section of the road.
And so would we need a different sort of engineer or someone who specializes in traffic?
I don't know, it would need to be separate depending on who the engineer is that we contact.
Yep.
They may be able to do both. I mean, Greg did both, so I'm sure another engineer can look at both, but depends how
Your,
quick you want to
think-
get.
yeah, your ordinance has specific standards, and if we're not expanding the standards of review and the ordinance is written for the board to interpret, and we want to make sure it meets those standards, I think the roadmap is there, standards versus submittal. I don't know that we want to expand it to standards that are outside of it, but it seems perfectly reasonable that, and I guess if Jesse ran into that, I don't have an opinion. I guess other than the fact that the ordinance has standards and they should be able to be reviewed, sort of parallel and at the same
Yeah.
time.
I know some towns are the boards require the applicant to do a have a traffic impact study done. Though I don't think our ordinance really allows for that. Is it something we can request? I don't know.
You'll hit it on a state road if you tip 100, you can get a traffic movement pattern from a state road. And that's usually the same sort of standard that another town might have, Mark, where you trip a certain level and the DOT needs a different permit.
Okay, we have a motion on the table, correct? In a second,
Yes, are we adding traffic to it?
we'd have to amend that. We could vote this down or we can just amend it, I guess. Lawson could amend his motion.
I guess I'm not sure that we need to add traffic, but is somebody suggesting that we should?
Yes,
Okay, you are. Okay.
yes.
So, is there a regulatory, I mean, what I'm hearing the applicant say, maybe if I'm hearing it right, is there isn't a requirement in here for, is there a hook for that somewhere in the SPO? SPRO?
For traffic impact?
Yeah.
Talks about the roads having adequate capacity in the development.
Okay. Oh, that sounds like something.
Yep,
I know we did it in the we did do
Yeah,
it.
I know, and I'm not sure where.
Trying to
it is.
remember, I'm trying to remind myself why and what was the regulatory hook for that? Oh, internal behavior. Yeah.
On page 16 of the SPRO,
Yep.
the adequacy of the road system,
Yeah, there it is right there.
and
Yep.
maybe we were talking about this for Pointy Head. I don't know. Or maybe
Yes,
it was-
yeah, it was Pointy Head.
Where we were talking about the 100 peak hour trips and whether or not this is above or below that threshold.
So I think, I don't know. I think we probably do add it.
You think we should do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
All right, then I'll amend my motion. Okay, sorry, before I do, the other question was, do we want the motion to include the April 14th submittal deadline?
Brett included that in his motion.
Yeah, I think if you want to go ahead, I mean, just
Okay.
make that part of what Jesse's going to ask him to do, you
Right.
know?
Okay, so I'm going to amend my motion and I'll just sort of clarify that we're asking Jesse to contract an engineer to review the stormwater management report and the traffic impacts. And provide a peer review by the end of the day, at end of business on April 14th.
Second.
Do I have a second? Okay. Motion second on the table to do what Lawson said. Trying to getting late here, folks. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Lawson,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
myself, yes. Okay, 4-0. Okay, we're
Do we have
done
to
with
ask-
the
Do we have to
campground,
ask
right?
for a fee?
Pardon?
Do we have to ask for a specific amount?
No.
No.
They've paid their $500. If the engineer goes above that, that's then we go back to them and ask for more money.
Okay. Thank you.
And you remember, James did advise us on that.
Yep.
Yep.
So we have one more thing, right? We need to set a date for that meeting,
Your regular meeting.
regular meeting, yeah.
Yep.
After this, whether we want to do it after the site visit.
Yeah. Do you want to?
But not
Saturday.
associated with Acadia Wilderness Lodge.
Correct.
Okay.
Right,
I
we're
see.
done with Acadia Wilderness for now.
Got it. Okay.
You could do 6:30 by Zoom that night. Or you can do it a different night if you need to.
Let's do it. And if there's no business, we just meet and we adjourn.
Well, I guess the do we want, I don't know, does anybody remember how long the site visit was at Pointy Head? I don't really remember, but this site is what, 10
It's
times the
40
size?
acres, right? So
Or okay, not 4 times the size. I
I
don't know
wanna
if we
say
need to see every
yeah.
square foot of it, but it's a big chunk of land that we're trying to wrap our heads around.
You'll need an hour.
So 6:30 sounds,
and for us to get back to our houses and everything.
all right.
Greg, is it pretty easy to get around the property for what you're
I would say not really.
doing?
Woods.
There's no
And,
there's no
there's
bugs
a-
anyway this time of year.
There's a woods road that was used for access for getting test pits and stuff. You can kind of get through, but yeah, it's not that easy.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Is that what 6:30? Everybody agree? I'll take a motion then.
I move that following the site visit on, was it 13th?
Yes.
Yep.
13th, we reconvene for any balance business on the agenda at 6:30 by Zoom.
A second.
Okay, motion and second to reconvene by Zoom at 6:30 after the site visit on the 13th. Any discussion?
One question, Jesse, if we run late, will you be able to go back and at least notify anyone who's clicked into a Zoom meeting that we're a little tardy?
Yep.
If we
I
get
can do
lost
that.
in the woods or something?
I'm lost in the woods.
Yep. You can do.
Is
Okay.
it, do we need to clarify that everybody should wear a mask? Are we all conditioned by, after a year of this to know that we need to wear a mask?
Wait, you
Yes.
can go out in public without a mask? I didn't know that.
Nope.
Actually, I'll have my second shot by then, so.
Actually, we're not in the public.
That's true.
On private land.
Right.
Okay. I think we can just all wear our mask, Lawson. I don't
Wear a
think
mask.
they
There
include
we
that
go.
in the motion.
Done.
Okay. All in favor, Lawson,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
myself, yes, 4-0. Okay. Does
Should
that
we have
take,
invited Marjorie back for that vote? It's probably fine that we didn't, but
no, because it involved the camp, well, for that one, oh, well.
but I think. we're
Sorry,
fine.
Marjorie. She can come back for the adjournment, though.
I'm
Um,
here.
He's back.
anything else?
It's been
Jesse, we know anything about a CEO? What's going on?
No, I believe we're just waiting for the budgeting process before we make any decisions.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have anything else? Hearing nothing, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Marjorie. I'll second.
Motion and a second on the table to adjourn. Thanks to Marjorie popping in at the end. All in favor, Lawson,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Marjorie,
Yes.
myself, yes. 5-0. Thanks, folks, for bearing with us. See you soon. Diane, nice meeting you. Hope to do it in person sometime.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, Jesse.
Thanks. Bye.